Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Asian Hustle Network podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us. Her name is Kasey Ma. Kasey,
Hello.
welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure being here.
We're very excited to have you on the podcast. So let's
Mhm.
get right into it, Kasey. We would love to know, what your upbringing was like, where you grew up, where you were born and raised, and what your childhood kind of shaped you to become the person that you are today.
Yeah, so I was born in North Jersey, very, very close to Manhattan in New York City up until I was 18 years old. I grew up actually in a very like Caucasian neighborhood. So from my upbringing, I already experienced a lot of, I guess you would say like unfortunately bullying and everything, from my schoolmates and stuff like that, just because I would like look different or my culture was very different. So I had to assimilate like really quickly and figure out how to kind of blend in with my American heritage because my parents had like no idea what was going on since I was, first generation. And it wasn't until I went to school in the city at NYU that I realized there are a lot of people that look like me and diversity is actually a thing. And it was the first time I actually felt comfortable within my own skin. And, it really sucked that it took my whole childhood to kind of realize, that I am normal and there are people like me and I can be seen even just as beautiful or accepted. Um, so I had a very, like, interesting semi, I guess, traumatic experience, like, growing up looking different, but I think it's really shaped who I am today and made me a lot stronger of, an Asian woman in America today. So that's how I grew up, studied economics in school. I also landed a job right out of college in the fashion industry, but more on the analytics, like number side. So I'd work a lot with the buyers and I would be a financial planner for, Lord and Taylor. And then I got recruited into Macy's as a pricing manager and analyst. And then I got recruited again by an external data analytics firm slash consulting company as well. So I just kind of jumped salaries like really quickly. And I definitely felt like everything that I thought was going against me when I was younger was all of a sudden, coming into fruition. And actually, in my career, it didn't matter at all. And being Asian was actually an advantage because we're just smarter people. We're like really smart and intelligent. And because I had to learn how to socially adapt quickly with people that might have not accepted me right away, it's easier now for me to like read the room. And if, even if someone doesn't initially like me, how do I break that barrier and make them feel comfortable to make me feel comfortable too? So I think that helped a lot with, my job experience. And throughout all of these jobs, I finally landed that six-figure income job. I was so excited, made my parents really proud. However, I was traveling every other week and I actually launched my blog the first year out of college. So I, did content creation old school where I would write articles on my blog. We were called bloggers, and it was about fashion. So basically, I would literally take my iPhone 4 at the time and ask my coworkers to take pictures of my dresses during lunch outside of the department stores and like find random parks to just take photos in. And I literally was like, never like nothing has to be perfect in order for you to start anything. And excuse me. And I don't know, I just launched my blog that day. I posted 3 times a week. I would stay up until like 2, 3 in the morning every day after my job, just posting on blog posts and coupling that with my Instagram at the time as well to drive more traffic to the website. And I had no idea that it was going to be lucrative until maybe 6 months later after launch. I'd been very consistent about it, barely sleeping. Um, Someone offered me money to wear their hat and their shirt 6 months into, just launching, and I was like, "Oh my goodness, you can make money off of this?" It was just such it was like a shell shock because I was just doing this because I love to write and I love to take photos and I loved social media at the time, and influencer wasn't even coined a term at that point, so it was back in 2015, like, nobody knew what that was, So it was really confusing as to why people were paying me to wear stuff when I wasn't even that big or anything like that. So I just kept up with it, was being consistent, started going to New York Fashion Week every single season. So I became really, really big in like the New York, fashion industry of like influencers. 2 years later, the influencer term came around. A lot of people started flooding the industry, the market. Um, Workload was getting like very heavy. I started hiring like assistants, photographers, videographers, people that would help me run my newsletter, publish my YouTube videos, edit my videos, basically like follow me around New York City and New Jersey to like take photos, and help me kind of put everything together. So it was really like a full blown social media agency almost, but like for myself. And it was just I just learned so much through that experience. So anyway, I was running that like, it was a business, but instead of the product being an actual physical tangible product, it was me. And, as an Asian American, like we're not really taught to kind of like brag about ourselves, if that makes sense. So it was like really weird that like the spotlight was on me and I was still trying to be humble as much as possible and like write about motivational stories and like growing up and how that it kind of affected me, like my troubles and my struggles. So I still tried to keep as grounded as possible. And I think a lot of that has helped me keep the humility that I have within this industry is that, I came from where the influencer industry was not a big thing. It wasn't very vain. It was kind of we posted because creatively, we liked it. We liked writing, we liked photos. There was not really a thing such as like clout chasing back then. We really just were writing to just do it and publish things and make ourselves happy and fulfilled in a creative way. So yeah, that was definitely like a weird experience. My parents were like, "This is a cute project, you're doing on the side. Like this is adorable. Like this is great." And then once I hit my six-figure income job, traveling every other week, I was like, "Hey dad, I have to tell you something." And he's like, "What?" And I go, "So I'm going to, quit my job and pursue being an influencer full time." He just like I remember it was at a steakhouse. He just looks at me and he's like, "Are you kidding me?" He's like, "How are you even going to make money?" And I was like,
Yeah.
"What do you mean, dad? I'm already making money. I'm making part-time income with my part-time hours with a full-time job." And he's like, "How much are you making a year?" And I'm like $30,000 a year. And he was like, "Oh, wow. That's actually, I thought you were making like $200 a year." Like, he was just, like, so surprised, and obviously 30K is not enough to live off of either, but, like, I just believed in myself so much that if I had put all of my hours into something that I really love, I feel like I could really make it full time. So, before quitting my job, I made sure to save up a year's worth of savings, which is, like, a ridiculous amount of cushion, like, usually have people have, like, 3 months, 6 months. But I was like, "No, 6 months of savings, um, and if all else failed, then it's fine. I can always go back to my job," right? So, I quit. Um, I actually quit because I was taking on too much as well. So, what really, like, pushed the needle for me was I was traveling in a plane from Ohio because we were traveling a lot. And I remember getting up out of my seat and I wanted to get water from the flight attendant. So as soon as, the seatbelt sign like turned off, I was like, okay, I'm gonna go to get some water. And I remember like my hand is like reaching up towards the kitchen, and all of a sudden I faint and I black out. I hit
Oh,
my
wow.
head on the corner of the seat, those like plastic armrests,
Yeah.
and I really hit my head. And then next thing I know, I'm, like, sitting up in a chair, and I wake up, and I'm like, "Did I just faint?" Like, I'm, like, looking at so many people are, like, surrounding me, like, wondering if I'm okay, and I know I had drank before, like, water and ate food and ate dinner beforehand, but I think because the stress level, my body physically couldn't handle a full-time job, like, with such high demands, and also me trying to succeed at a side hustle. Um And it was at that point where I was like, okay, I really need to step back and realize like what just happened to my body. And, at that time also, like 2 months before that, my mom had just got diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. So
Wow.
with that and, coupled with me like fainting and, blacking out and, actually we had to rush to the hospital. They had emergently land the plane for me. The whole United airline, like literally we landed 2 hours into the flight and I had to stay overnight until like 4 in the morning and I couldn't even tell my parents because they were sleeping at the time. So like I was just all alone and even my boyfriend at the time was sleeping too. So it was just like I felt so alone and it really brought me into like this mindset where, I'm young and I need to do what I love to do now. With my mom being sick, I wanted to spend more time with her. She also made me realize how life is precious and you never know like when it's going to end. So you might as well just give everything your all. Um, and not make your body suffer like that. So, all of that together, it just made me really want to pursue, my dreams. So that's basically like a really long story about like how I came to be, like where I am for at least content creation. So that's why I decided, to pursue that route.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm so sorry to hear what happened with your mother. I
Thank
mean, that
you.
must have been such a heartbreaking time for you, especially when you were juggling both your job and being a content creator full time and doing both of those things. And with, health issues with, people in your family, that just weighs down on you so, so much. And
It does.
it just goes to show, like, if there's just so much on your plate, all that burden on your shoulders, we get burnt out. We get burnt out so easily, and that's why you probably fainted. That's probably why you fainted on that plane, and I'm so glad to hear that you're okay now.
Yeah, me too.
But that is such an amazing story, Casey. Like, there's so much to break down there, and I was just going to ask, like, what year you started content creation. You said it was 2015, and
Hmm.
you're right. At that time, like, no one knew what an influencer was. Like, no one really knew that you can make money off social media. And people were just posting on Instagram just to post on Instagram, like posting their food pics and
Food
posting like,
pics. Yeah,
yeah,
selfies, like
exactly. It was
pictures of
like,
your jewelry. Like it was like
yeah.
same stuff.
Yeah, exactly. Like very, very basic stuff, everyday kind of stuff. But like no one really took it seriously to the point where they knew, oh, I could possibly be making money off this. So for you to actually, kind of think a couple steps ahead of everyone else, and
Mhm.
even if you didn't know that you can make a lot of money off of it, but you still went at it and kept at it, it just goes to show like that perseverance, like maybe this will be something in the end. And
Mhm.
it really did become something in the end. And it's just so
Yeah.
amazing to see. Um, I know that you were juggling both your job and content creation. Did you always have like this entrepreneurial mindset? Like, did you grow up thinking you were going to become an entrepreneur, or was it something like that just came out of nowhere because you started content creation? Because, working your 9 to 5, it is, everyone always says like, if you don't come from an entrepreneurial background, it's really hard to
Mhm.
see like that entrepreneurial mindset or have that entrepreneurial mindset. So I want to hear from your perspective. Like, did you always know that you were going to become an entrepreneur?
Yes, actually, when I was a kid, I mean, it probably helped because my dad is also an entrepreneur as well. So he actually wanted us to all have like a stable job because I know he said he struggled so much to launch his business. And he obviously wants the best for us and to have a stable job. But like within myself, I knew I always wanted to start something of my own. And I knew I wanted it to be in fashion. So hence the fashion blogging, which is what I started in. And originally, I actually bought my domain. My company is called The Style Right LLC. And under that company, I was going to actually curate local designers and boutiques and sell them via a storefront online. So it was going to be like very similar to Ideally or Guilt, but less about flash sales and more about promoting local businesses. And that was the domain I originally got, and it was on Shopify. And then I realized, even though I landed these meetings and was able to talk to these store owners and they really loved the idea, I couldn't leave my job in the middle of the day to negotiate these meetings for 3 hours. So and by the time my work ended, I couldn't see them at 7, 8 PM, like, they had to go home. So I knew that wasn't viable, for my first type of entrepreneurship. So, yeah, I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, and, like, even now, I'm visiting this idea back, and I'm starting, a gaming accessories tech brand. So, it's just always within me to start something and try new things. I'm definitely a go-getter, and I'm not afraid to take risks. I'm always make sure they're very calculated. But yeah, I'm making this brand for females. I'm all about like female empowerment too. So, everything that speaks to my soul is just I just try it out. And it's not my first idea either. Like I've had 5 other different ideas. I've had like a fitness brand idea, like a lifestyle clothing brand. I've had jewelry. I thought about beauty. I've thought about so many things. But I really wanted to give back to the industry that saved me during the pandemic. And that's when I had pivoted into Twitch gaming and streaming. And I realized how much of a struggle it is to become a female streamer. And I was like, let me give women all the tools and the confidence they need to, you know, be able to make these cute setups and, know that like marketing themselves is really important. And I want to give them the tools, to be able to create that type of environment for them.
Yeah, I love that. And
Yeah.
I know I can obviously, tell that you have done so much for female representation and women representation. And
Mhm.
especially with being a Twitch partner, we can talk about that as well. I really want to know like what was your experience being on Twitch? Because I've heard from so many other different women on Twitch saying how hard it is, especially because that industry is so overpopulated with men, right? And that goes with
Yeah.
any industry, I think. Like a lot of different industries are overpopulated with men, and it's just natural. I think it's because like women we don't speak up as often.
Yeah.
Either that could just be imposter syndrome or people don't give us the time of day to let us actually tell our stories or to voice our opinions. And I think it's so amazing that you're actually increasing that representation for women on screen and for example on Twitch. So I want to know, like, we can go into that a little bit more too, because we obviously know that you're on The One That Got Away. But
Mhm.
before we get into that, tell us like what your experience is like on Twitch and how it kind of like shifted and how it has changed your perspective on women representation on online and on Twitch.
Yeah, so already it was tough as an influencer to be a female, I think, in my experience. But luckily, because so many females had entered the market, when I went to events, there were always, other females there in the room to kind of support you, especially in fashion. I mean, luckily that was, you know, I was always surrounded by females or gay men, but like usually it's not, straight men who, would harass me or whatever like that. I would get a few jabs here and there online, but because mostly my audience was female, it was totally fine. And the content that I was posting about was catered towards female. So I'd always, cater towards a predominantly, woman audience. During the pandemic, however, I a lot of fashion and beauty brands had cut their marketing a lot, and that included social media marketing as well. So I was basically out of all of my campaigns for almost a year, I would say, and it was terrifying because how was I going to pay the bills and how was I going to put food on my table? Like all of these things I was worried about all of a sudden, and I hadn't had to for a while. So I switched to gaming because I was playing this game called Animal Crossing. And again, luckily, a predominantly female actually game too. So, it's a calmer game. It's about decorating your islands and like changing clothes. And it really felt like I was being a fashion icon, but like in Animal Crossing. So it was like the perfect game for me to be naturally gravitated towards. I actually wasn't even a gamer before then, but I picked it up because I was just like so sad and depressed about my life. And I was like, what do I do with my life? I have no campaigns, I have no work, I have no gigs. And I was like, let me just take my stress out on this game. Started playing 10 hours a day and realized the addiction was real. And I started, actually playing with my friends, I found out that a lot of people online were actually playing the game. So when I posted it on my Instagram, some of my community, some of my friends were like, "Oh, I play that game too. Like, we should play together sometime." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, yeah, sure, let's do that." And I realized the camaraderie that was built just by gaming with people for so long during this really hard time. So one time, my friend, he was like, "You're so good at, like, talking on the spot. Have you thought about Twitch streaming?" And I go, "Oh, no, 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 no. That's not for me. We're not doing that." I was like, "I like everything to be edited and, like, I think about it before it's posted." And he was like, "Well, I know you like content creation and you've been depressed about not being able to produce anything and make any money off of it. So maybe you can, like, try building your audience on a different platform while you're bored and sad." And I'm like, "Okay." No, I sat on it for, like, 3 months, and then after that, I was like, "Alright, screw it. Let me just try it. I have nothing else to do. I like learning new things." So I literally started, and I was so scared. I, actually did my first stream on my MacBook Pro, which is not a computer you should stream on, by the way. It will eat your processor alive and make it die. But I did it anyway, and I streamed for like 6 hours on my first stream. And then I knew I was like, I'm in love with just building a community all the time. Like this is my calling. It was just so natural for me. And then the game play actually didn't save on my Twitch. So then I got really upset. And it took me a while to start streaming again, so I waited like a month, and the first consistent stream I did, I was literally no makeup. I did it on my phone, and it was literally a just chatting stream, like a FaceTime quality type of stream. And I was like, "You know what? I'm just gonna press go live because if I don't do this now, I'm never gonna do it." And I was like, "It doesn't have to be perfect." So I literally just went live and I was just like, "Hey, how you doing?" Like, I play Animal Crossing. How are you? I know the game's not on the screen, but I thought this was a great way to introduce myself to you guys. So that was my first stream. And then from then, I was like, okay, well, I know in order to grow on anything, you have to be consistent. So I streamed 4 to 5 days a week. And then I finally got my act together. Just started to stream Animal Crossing on my laptop for 3 months. And my laptop literally did die. So, because you're not supposed to stream on that. I taught myself how to build a computer from scratch just so it can handle both gaming and streaming at the same time. Because I realized in 3 months, I had grown so much and it was like a new audience. And luckily, again, like I said, my audience was mostly female. So I didn't experience too much trolling yet. So that was 3 months, built my computer, I started making, like, $200 a month to, like, eventually, like, $3,000 a month within 6 months, and I was like, "I'm paying my bills again, are you serious?" I was, like, so excited, like, it was such a huge success story, and in 6 months, I also got Twitch partner too. So I had grown, like, so much within such a short period of time. Um, and, once the Animal Crossing hype died down and, like, the game kind of concluded, it was, again, right timing, right place. I think the game, it launched, so, I capitalized on that moment. And right now, even though my audience has dwindled because I changed into Fortnite mostly now, and I'm, like, trying out new games, and I guess I'm not as, like, organized, because I have a lot going on, but I still stream 3 times a week. But it was only when I started streaming on Fortnite and, like, did more just chatting streams where I would just chat for 2 hours before the game that I started to receive a lot of trolls and a lot of hate. So, I swear, like, people just see a female on screen, especially if she's a minority, and they will say, like, very sexist things or, things about me being Asian. Like, it was terrible. Like, they would just be like, "Oh my god, open your eyes," or, things like, "Why are you streaming on here? Like, this is for boys or this is for men. You don't know what you're doing here." So I'd get a lot of, hateful messages like that. And streaming is a little bit more difficult to manage because they're saying this stuff to you live, and you have to think about how to respond to it in, like, a second
Right.
versus, something on Instagram or like a blog post, you can just kind of think about it and maybe delete it, right? I did teach my mods to, delete comments like that pretty quickly and like ban them so they don't affect me as much. But I have to choose between ignoring them or sometimes I like to call them out because it's fun. But again, obviously if it feeds too much into it, then ban them. But I like to set an example for my community since they are mostly females that if a man talks to you like this or a boy talks to you like this, it's not always great to be silent about it because they're just going to keep doing it because they're not receiving any repercussions or any fighting back. And I'm definitely a person where I'm like, hey, why did you feel like you needed to bring your trauma into my community? This is a place where we're trying to be positive here. So, regardless of what I look like, you can keep your comments to yourself because they're obviously coming from a place of hurt. And I hope you get the help you need to become a more secure version of yourself. Like, I'm just like, I say stuff like that um, to I just wanna stand up for myself, and I really hope, like, even in relationships, if their husband, if their boyfriend, or their friend talks to them like this and they're uncomfortable, to know that there are people like me that will say something back, and if you wanna say something back, that's okay too. So, that's why I do that on Twitch, and over time, it, like, was really tough, but you do start to ignore these things and realize it's not about you, it's about them a lot. So, that's what really got me through, I would say Twitch streaming for sure, and now it's just I have amazing mods who know, like, if any of that happens, they just ban them immediately, and I just have to ignore them. I just start focusing on the game again, and why I'm streaming in the first place is to create a community of people together to feel comfortable. I know a lot of people have said that, like, I've saved them, like, throughout the pandemic because I was like a sister to them or like a mom to them if they were younger, and I helped, them a lot through their anxiety or their depression when they felt so alone being isolated and quarantined, and when I remember, like, that's the reason why I stream and why it kept me going, it kinda makes these little comments so minuscule and much easier to ignore. So that would
Right.
be, like, my advice, I guess, just focus on why you did it in the first place, and the more successful you become, the more haters you're gonna get, so you're
Oh,
doing
yeah.
something right.
Definitely. No,
Yeah.
I was just going to say that because I've oftentimes hate comments, it's really just a reflection of the person who's leaving that comment, right? And it's like
Mhm.
they don't know you. They don't, talk to you on a daily basis. So it's like where do they find that foundation to actually have or comment that hate comment, right? And I do agree with you like the bigger you get, the more hate you're going to get. And that's
Mhm.
just natural. Like you're going to get, maybe there's a lot of younger people on social media who just haven't really, experienced a lot yet and they don't really know, the right things to say. And a lot of times it's just they're just projecting from themselves and it's a reflection of who they are. But I agree with you. Like if you have the opportunity to educate them, then I think it's important for, you to make an educated response in order for you to, teach them and, make sure that they don't do it again. But sometimes
Exactly.
like it's not worth it to leave a comment. It's not worth it to
Exactly.
respond to them. So it really depends. You either not respond to them and delete their comment or ban them, or you can, try to educate them. And if they still don't change, if they still feel like they want to leave a hate comment, at least you know that you did your part, you did your part to
Exactly.
educate them. And I'm glad that you're able to kind of like find the right way that worked for you in order to educate your followers and your platform, the people who are following you. And so I love that advice. It's really, really good. Um,
Mhm.
yeah. And so, I mean, you've done so much, and it's just amazing to see how fast you've grown. And I just wanted to circle back on the fact that, you just had your iPhone out, you didn't even have your makeup on. Oftentimes, like the ones that are like super laid back are the ones that do really well. And that goes
Yeah.
for like TikTok too. Like I feel like people are so like honed in on making their content perfect that they spend so much time perfecting it. Oh, it has to be perfect. I have to edit it. I have to make sure the sound is good. But then most of the
Mhm.
times when it's like the most laid back content, like when you don't even have your makeup on or if you don't even like edit it, oftentimes it does really well because your audience or your followers feel like they're seeing your natural you, they're seeing the most real you, and so they're able to connect with you more. And I
Exactly.
think that just goes to show, like, just do it. Like, just post your content, just, stream, just do it, but don't, like, worry too much about the minuscule stuff, which is, like, exactly what you did.
Yeah, people really appreciate authenticity.
Yeah.
And I know a bunch of friends and people who have come up to me and, asked me for advice about social media. How do they start? And it's never about the skill or the fact that they don't have time to do this. I find that's usually an excuse. Most of where I think it comes from, why they feel like they can't start, is definitely this need to be perfect and
Yeah.
this need to, have the best equipment, photos, and all of this. And if they can't achieve that level of greatness on their first post, they don't want to put it out there. And I find that really hinders a lot of budding entrepreneurs from taking that first leap of faith. There is a beauty in being able to embrace mistakes and embracing risk, because once you make these mistakes or these, faults that maybe you didn't want, there's at least a foundation you of like measurement in which you can improve upon. So there's only up from the mistake. So that's where I look at, success and why maybe I have a more positive outlook on trying new things, is because I'm like, mistakes, psh, I love those. Those are great because like tomorrow it's going to be even better. Like there's no more, it can't get worse. And I
Yeah.
really believe like the world is just, it's just fighting for balance. Like there's a lot of downs, but if it's down for so long, it's going to go up real soon. And that's what I really, really believe in. So, just knowing that the universe has its way of balancing things out for you, then you don't really have to be afraid. Like a lot of people want to achieve this extreme level of happiness. Whereas, like, I view life as, I'm trying to get to this level of contentment, which
Yeah.
has waves of happiness, sadness, depression, and that's normal. You just want to get as close to the middle as possible, but you don't have to go all the way up there, because that's unrealistic. And that's where I think contentment comes from.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I do want to shift the podcast a little bit
Mhm.
and talk about the one that got away. So, Kasey, you were casted as a lead along with Vince Su on
Mhm.
the reality dating show, The One That Got Away, and it's on Prime Video and Amazon Freevee that just came out. So this is the first time ever an Asian male and female have been casted as leads on an American reality dating show,
Mhm.
which is amazing. And that's, being in the bachelor or bachelorette role instead of a suitor. So
Exactly.
tell us how this all happened. What was that experience like, and what was that process like? How did they approach you, or did you reach out to them? And have you ever had any acting experience before?
Okay, so no to the acting experience. I took like one acting class in high school. But I never wanted to pursue that route. That's even harder than content creation. No thanks. But no thank you. So actually I had been reached out by MTV first and Viacom to actually star on another show. It was kind of similar to Bling Empire, but without the money. But it was about Asian entrepreneurs within a friend group. And that was before the pandemic started. I had made it to the final round, my friend group and I was going to be the one in the middle, um, like the main character. And it was like my group of friends. Like I was gonna kind of be like Kevin Kreuter, I guess, but like, me. And they were in between an LA group and a New York group, and they were gonna fly us out to California. And then literally that same week in March, I think it was 2018, that's when the pandemic happened and it was a worldwide shutdown. And I was so upset because this was like the perfect show for me. And again, I was being able to represent Asian minorities again. So I was just like so excited to do it. But that never went through. So the casting recruiter was, saying that they'll keep me in mind for future opportunities. And honestly, I didn't really think much of it because, everyone who's ever applied for a job, you hear that all the time. Like, this is not a good fit at this moment, but we'll keep your resume on file for future opportunities. And then you like never hear back from them. So I really thought I was never going to hear back from them ever. Fast forward 2 years later, I actually had just ended my 7.5 year relationship, actually. And that's when the one that got away, casting producers reached out to me. I'd probably been about like 6 months out of the relationship to a year. And they said, we have this opportunity where you will get to date people from your past, whether they went to your school, you were in the voice class together, or it's a mutual friend that you know. And I was like, "You're kidding me. This is perfect," because I've always been such a monogamous type of relationship person. I've always been in relationships, so I never got to date before ever. Like, I've only been single for as long as maybe 6 months. So I had no idea what dating was about. I was like, "This is perfect." I've definitely, like, caught eyes with a cute guy in my class, but like couldn't say anything because I was in a relationship and I'm good at being loyal, like all of these things. So I was like, oh my God, who has had a crush on me? Who would date me? I'm like, this is so exciting. So they really did follow through. They did think of me. And the casting process was really long. It was 6 months because it wasn't just me they were casting, it was me plus six other dates, right? That would want to show up for me, quarantine for 2 weeks, would need to take off their job for a month and a half. They'd have to take off and show up for me. They would have to be single, like not married, no kids. And, at 30 years old, that's like a little difficult to find sometimes. So, there was definitely a longer casting process. And it was like that for all six of us too. Yeah. So they dug through our social media, our Instagram, Facebook, everything. And then if they couldn't find anyone, they would ask us, okay, can you also submit a list of guys that might be interested in you and are single and from your past. And I'm like, oh my God, okay. So that's kind of like how it happened. And none of us knew who was going to show up for us at the portal. And that's how chaos happened on the show.
Oh my gosh, that is so crazy. That would be so much pressure for me. I'm like, I don't even know who to name. Like,
It was crazy. There was a point where there were like some guys are falling through because they have jobs and they can't take off and they were like really good candidates. And I'm like, uh-oh. So I literally go through my Facebook and I'm like, New York University, alphabetized. And I'm like, okay, this one, this one, this one, this one, high school. Okay, here we go. It was crazy. It felt so like regimented. And I wish I had people at the top of my mind, but like a lot of them, you'd be surprised, like can't make this happen because of their work and stuff.
yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's amazing. I mean, we're not going to give away too much about the show because we want our listeners to, watch it themselves and find out what happens. But
Yes.
it's just amazing how you and Vince have done so much to, represent Asians on the show. And I think it's very special because there's a lot of other dating shows that are just only Asians, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. I do love seeing a lot more Asian reality dating shows on Netflix. But
Mhm.
the one thing that's so special about the one that got away is that not everyone on the show is Asian. And so it just exemplifies, Asian representation is so important. It's good to see Asians being on the same show as other, ethnicities that are non-Asian.
Exactly.
So it is really, really amazing to see. What was that one thing that you kind of learned from the reality dating show that, you could take away from you just in regards to Asian representation and women representation from the show?
Um, you know, really stick to your guns, I would say is the best lesson I've learned, and really know who you are and don't settle for anybody. If you're sacrificing so much of yourself to give to someone else, that's not the person for you. Even though this person will show how much they adore you or they're being a gentleman and they're doing all the right things, if they're not uplifting you, if they're not challenging you to become a better person, this is not a right fit for you. I realized you're not supposed to be in a relationship to fulfill your happiness. You're wanting to be in a relationship or finding that partner to complement your happiness. And I think that's the most important lesson, that I've learned, that I really need to be happy about myself and where I am in life before I can even chip away at that and like share it with someone else. And that other partner should also be thinking the same thing. There's so many codependent relationships out there that are super unhealthy. And you can see in the beginning of the show, I kind of have that. And I'm struggling with like my past self and my past choices in relationships where is if the guy is being an amazing suitor and saying all the right things, I'm like, oh my God, I'm in love. And it would fool me. And that's not who I should be picking to share with, in my life. So now I'm like extremely more selective and who would possibly be like my next boyfriend because I would hopefully want them to be my husband too. So I definitely want them to, not only say the right things, but do the right things and show me that, they really do appreciate and value me and want me to grow individually too.
Yeah, spot on. And that can go for relationships, business partners, like your community,
Everything.
everything. Yeah. And
Friendships, like, oh my
friendships,
God.
right. And it's so
Yeah.
easy for, a lot of people to kind of have this, I don't know, face or mask to, try to show that they're like the best person. But, you have to make sure that their values align with yours. And, this could go for your girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever, business partner, friend, whatever it may be. Like, I think that's a really, really good lesson and advice that you gave. Just make sure that that person has your best interests and vice versa, right? Because there's a lot of people who might not have that for you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I've also like learned how to put even like friendships in different categories almost. It's like, okay, so here are the friends that I can share everything with, my soul, my heart, my everything. And then here are friends that are like, maybe they're more acquaintances or like business professionals and we can keep friendly like that. And there's people that you don't really get along with. And maybe you'll just see them when you see them, right? And then there's people obviously you really don't like, which hopefully is not that many. So it's like when you meet someone, it's almost like you have to put them in these 4 different categories, and it's a really interesting process, like, I'm learning as an adult that, like, I used to put everyone in the first category, like, let's share everything with them, like, I wanna be best friends with everyone, but I realized, like, not everyone wants that, and it can hurt you if you put too much of, like, your heart on your sleeve, like, in that way. So I've definitely been learning that through friendships too.
Yeah, absolutely. So, Casey, what's next for you in, let's say, the next 5 years? What do you have planned for yourself? And do you have anything that you'd like to share with the audience?
Um, yeah, so, basically, like, on my Twitch streams, I'm doing some sort of, I guess, like a talk show soon, like setup, where I'm going to be inviting other entrepreneurs. I'm gonna like favor the Asian people, but like, I'm not just going to do that, but like uplifting entrepreneurs and content creators and being able to tell their story is something that I really want to do and like give back. And also, again, my gaming tech brand as well. I'm hoping that in 5 years it should launch by then. And I'm hoping that it's successful. And yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll make another TV appearance. Hopefully not a dating show. Maybe something else that's more focused on like either my life or my entrepreneurship, something that's also uplifting, but in a different way. And then hopefully in 5 years, I'm like married as well. So all of these good things, like, hopefully you'll be able to expect and see from me in 5 years.
Yay, we can't wait. And I know for sure those things are all going to happen. So,
Thank you.
yeah, of course. Casey, we have one last question for you.
Mhm.
And that is if you could give one advice to someone who is trying to find their voice and trying to, represent themselves, whether they be, Asian or any other minority group or as a woman, even, what would that one advice be?
Um, I would say don't be afraid to stand up for yourself. Know your value, know your worth. Make sure people know that. Don't shove it in their face and say, like, I'm the best, but show it through your actions and really exude that confidence that you have. The world is full of haters. You cannot stop them, but like don't let that stop you from being the best person you are, you know?
Yeah, love that
Yeah.
advice. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
that.
Of course.
So, where can our listeners find out more about you online and the one that got away?
So you can watch The One That Got Away. It's streaming on Amazon Prime and on Amazon Freebie, which is a free service. So even if you don't have Prime, you can watch it as well. And I'm Kasey Ma on all socials, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and Twitch. You'll actually be able to talk to me live on Twitch, so that's really cool. And on Twitter, Kasey Ma with 2 underscores. I don't know who took my name, but someone did.
Awesome. We'll leave all of that in our show notes of this episode. Casey, thank you so much for sharing
Perfect.
your story with us. It was amazing having you on our show today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome.